Good morning. Welcome to the Christel Crawford Show. I'm Christel Crawford. I think this show's going to get a new name soon. I called this week's episode, hey Maxie, I called this week's episode Feelings or No Feelings, Which One is Right? Hi Dwight. And I did it on purpose. I wanted to be an instigator. I wanted to start a different conversation, and I'm really, really, really excited about where we're going to go this week. Hi, Roseanne. Hi, Sabrina. Hi, Dee. You guys are so awesome. I love it when you join me live. Hey. Okay, so one of the things that I've been really, I think claiming, owning, acknowledging is that I'm an access consciousness facilitator. And you know what the purpose of access is to create a planet where oneness, I'm butchering this, but basically to create a planet of oneness and no judgment. When you get into a conversation of feelings, having feelings for somebody, functioning from feelings, or no feelings, you're in a very different conversation than when you start having a conversation of creating a reality beyond this reality. Okay, so this is actually what I want to play with you about today is there's this reality which functions from feelings and no feelings, and then there's a beyond this reality conversation that has to do with being, knowing, perceiving, and receiving. Now, the thing is with this conversation is that a lot of times it's really, really easy to have this conversation and it can feel really conceptual. It can feel like, I'm using the feeling word a lot today, I'm going to point that out. It can feel like this conceptual conversation of being, knowing, perceiving, and receiving, it does not apply to your life. But here's the thing, and the thing that I would love to have you look at with me, is that if consciousness includes everything and judges nothing, then consciousness includes feelings, it includes no feelings, it includes judgment, it includes the Kavanaughs of the world, it includes choosing to fight, it includes choosing to not fight, and it includes all these different things that you could possibly choose in a relationship, in your life. It includes being broke, it includes being rich, it includes all the facets in between about money, it includes everything. Consciousness includes everything, judges nothing. Functioning from consciousness, which would mean that you include everything and judge nothing, is a completely different and other conversation that goes beyond feelings and no feelings. So how then do you begin to apply this to your, why would you even, for what reason would you choose more consciousness? Like, because it's the right thing to do, because it's the new mindfulness, because it's the, consciousness is the new black, because it's all your friends are doing it, or something else? For what reason would you choose consciousness? For what reason would you choose to judge nothing, include everything, and have total awareness of everything, right? Like, who cares? Well, what I started to look at is that consciousness is also incredibly pragmatic. And the thing that I keep hearing over and over and over is that this is actually about creating a life that works. Now, I am the queen. I was the queen of feelings and no feelings. Hi, Ellie. Literally, I mean, that's how I was raised. That's how I was raised in my family. So to create good relationships, here's how you do it. Let me give you the formula. To create good relationships, you have to feel your feelings. Here was my mom's rules for good relationships. Okay, you ready? Feel your feelings because shutting them down is wrong. Ask for your needs to be met. How did this go? Feel your feelings. Tell the truth. Ask for your needs to be met. And there was one more that I can't remember now but those three, and I cannot tell you how many times she would say that. Feel your feelings, tell the truth, and ask for your needs to be met. Those were the three rules, okay? So in my family, what happens is somebody will say something, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to put this in a different context this time. So somebody will say, this is how our old family dynamic would work. Somebody would say something, somebody else would get offended by it and have feelings about it. Then we would have to talk about it. And then we would have to get to the place where we understand each other so that we can actually have a good relationship, none of which actually created something that worked. Because what happened was we would be in this cycle over and over and over and over and over. But that's what you're told. You go to psychotherapy, you go to therapy, those are kind of the rules of the game. Like, if you want to have good relationships, you got to feel your feelings, ask for your needs to be, tell the truth, and ask for your needs to be met, right? So here was the phrase, when you do this, I feel, and what I need from you is, okay? So let's just put this, this was my upbringing, okay? And to be fair, that was considered mental health, and those were the tools that we had available to us at the time. So those were the tools that we used. When you do this, I feel, and what I need from you is, right? That sounds kind of like, that sounds responsible. I like it. So if I put that into, I'm going to put that into the context of the relationship I'm in right now. So let's just say Jim's having an off day, right? Like, this is something that actually occurs. So he will go into this, he gets into work mode, right? And he doesn't even know he's there. And he'll be at home and he's working, and his face, you know how when you're working you get resting bitch face, right? Sabrina, I see your comment. I'll chat about that in a second. You know how when you're working, you like your face goes resting bitch face. Okay, so there's been a few times where I didn't know that we didn't know each other very well, so I wasn't really familiar with his resting bitch face. We've had, a few rocky times in the middle, and so hi Beth, hi Andrea. So I would just go and ask him about it. I'm like, hey, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And it would sort of shake him out. But here's what I would have done in the past. So Jim would have been working, resting bitch face, and I would have immediately concluded that something is that he was overthinking about something about me because he wasn't interacting with me in the way that he normally did, and then I would have confronted him about it based on my conclusion about what was going on, and I would have said, well, when you do this, this makes me feel this way, and what I need from you is... So then he would have to change what he's doing so that I don't feel a certain way, which would then result in him not being able to be himself and us dancing on eggshells, because now we're not actually sure if what the one person is doing is actually hurting the other person's feelings, and blah, 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 right? Messy, not actually really that functional is the thing. So here's what I've been playing with instead. There's this conversation in Access about acceptance versus allowance, okay? Acceptance versus allowance. What the fuck's the difference, right? Acceptance in this particular situation where Jim goes into work mode and is resting bitch face, acceptance would be, well, I just have to accept that that's the way it is, right? I have to accept that that's what he does. Heavy. Okay, by the way, what's light for you is true for you. What's heavy is a lie. That's heavy. Acceptance is heavy. Allowance is... okay, cool, he's working. Resting bitch face. I wonder what's going on in there. I wonder when he'll be interactive again, right? And not jumping to conclusion that something that he's doing is about me and then having feelings about it, right? Feelings are always to control the other person. This was a piece of information that when I first heard it, I was both horrified and excited and embarrassed for myself, because I functioned from feelings nonstop 24/7. I either did intense feelings about things or I did intense no feelings, which by the way are the flip sides of the same coin, right? That was my way of functioning in the world. So then I got this information that feelings are a way to control other people, and I'm pretty sure I giggled because I'm like, I do that a lot. It's like, I really like feelings. They're like my favorite, And so I've gotten to really observe myself in different relationships, like with my family. I was just with my sisters and with Jim, and go, okay, so if I do this right, so this is the thing, is like all your choices create, okay? Every single choice you make creates. So if I make a choice out of feelings, right? If I'm having feelings about what he's doing and I make a choice about it, in that moment, from feelings, that's going to create something. Most of the time, it creates him freaking out because he wants to make me happy and he didn't realize he was doing it and it wasn't about me anyway, and he's like, now he feels bad that, that I felt that way. And so we're in this cycle of shitstorm because I made a choice based on feelings, okay? If instead I choose allowance. Okay, so allowance is where everything is just an interesting point of view. It's just an interesting point of view that he's got resting bitch face. It's just an interesting point of view that he hasn't interacted with me and played with me in the way that he normally does. It's just an interesting point of view that I have the point of view, that he's got the point of view. All of that's just an interesting point of view. Now that has taken a lot of choice, that has taken on my part a lot of like 10-second choices, just so you guys know. I didn't just like hop into interesting point of view and like, oh, well, interesting point of view, eh? That's one of those things that we tell you to use for every single thought and every single feeling and every single emotion for at least 3 days, but do it for a year and you'll be totally free. Because this is such an unfamiliar way of functioning. Interesting point of view is not the way of functioning that we're taught when we come onto the planet, you know? So allowance for that situation is, wow, it's just an interesting point of view. Looks like he's got a lot going on. And yes, interesting point of view is for you in your head. Don't say it out loud. If you say it out loud to somebody else, you're being a dick. Don't be a dick. Well, that's an interesting point of view, is a judgment, you fuckers. Don't do that. It's for you in your head, and it's actually to get the charge off of all the feelings. It's to get the charge off of the point of view. So here I would be, I'm using the same example. So here I would be stewing in my own thing, like he's resting bitch face, he's not talking to me, I've come to conclusion about it, and now I have feelings about it. What's true about the situation? Well, we don't know right now, right? Are my feelings true? Is my point of view true? Is his point of view true? Is any of it real? What are we going to make real about that situation, right? And then if I make it real and I come into the situation with those feelings and I make it real, then we have a reality that's not based on any reality. It's not based on what is. It's based on feelings. So the whole conversation is, if you widen out the view and you take it out of feelings and no feelings for a second, everything that you choose creates something, right? So the question becomes, what is this going to create? If I choose to say this thing to this person, what's that going to create? Is that going to create less or more? Less. Okay. So then what tools do I need to use to deal with myself? A lot of us choose the tool of confronting and getting the other person engaged because that person needs to do something else different so that I don't feel this way, right? A lot of us choose that. Some of the others of us choose no feelings. Well, I don't care anyway, it's fine. I'm just gonna go cold and silent, since he's been cold and silent, and we do the no feelings version. Also a control attempt, right? There is another choice available. And the conversation of access consciousness is to introduce all of us to these choices we have available that are beyond this reality, okay? Beyond this reality, choices include allowance. Beyond this reality, choices include the conversation of what does this create? If every choice I make creates a future, what does this choice of confronting this person in this moment create the future I'd like to have, right? It brings awareness, awakeness to your every moment that you have choice, you do create with every single choice that you make. What is that choice going to create, right? That's not something that we're used to interjecting into our day. What does this choice create? If I say this, what does that create? If I don't say that, what does that create? Now, I'm not talking about doubt. I'm not talking about second guessing yourself. I'm talking about awareness. Because consciousness includes it all. Consciousness will include your trauma and drama. I've done it plenty of times. Consciousness includes hardship. Consciousness includes problems. Consciousness includes feelings. How do you want to function in the world? That's the thing. So when you function from feelings, it creates this certain kind of life, right? Because you're always going to be resisting and reacting to things. That's how feelings work. You're always going to be trying to control the other person. Even no feelings, going to cold and separate. Always trying to control things that way. So is that the ultimate form of control? Yes or no? Maybe not. Is control from awareness a different possibility? So what do you have to choose to be able to choose control from awareness, right? It's awareness just is. Awareness is where everything just is. So we'll take this example with Jim and his work mode resting bitch face example. He's such a sweetie. It just is. He's working. He's got a resting bitch face. That just is. I look at him. I'm wondering what's going on. That also is. Then we've got whatever I want to create with that. So if I choose to be playful with him, that's going to create something. If I choose to get hurt about that, that's going to create something. If I choose to get offended by that, that's going to create something. If I choose to go cold on him, that's going to create something. Which of those choices is going to create what I want to have? If playful's going to create what I want to have, and I'm not feeling playful at the moment, then my job is with me, not with him. What are the tools? Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Who does this intensity even belong to is another great question. How many points of view am I using to create the trauma and drama I keep wanting to choose? That is another great tool. Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And you can go to theclearingstatement.com if you want to find out more about that statement. How many points of view am I using to create whatever's going on in here? How many lies am I aware of? How many lies am I functioning from? Those are all the tools to deal with me, to get me to the place where I can actually choose something that works for me. How many of your choices from feelings are working against you? How many times do you choose things in relationships that actually work against you? Now, I'm not talking about, I have 2 calls coming up that this isn't related to on Thursday and Friday called Are You Depressed or Suppressed? That's a whole other conversation where, you know, I'm not talking about suppressing yourself. I'm talking about being in total allowance of all the things. Total allowance of what the other person's got going on, total allowance of what you've got going on, total allowance if you're doing feelings that you're in feelings right now, right? Total allowance of feeling hurt, victimized, offended, and being with all of that as an interesting point of view, like not using it to react to the other person to create trauma and drama, unless that's what works for you, because consciousness includes that. I really want to emphasize that, because we keep thinking there's a right way to be and there's a wrong way to be. That is not actually true. There's just thoughts, feelings, emotions, sex, and no sex, which are the lower harmonics of being. And there's being and knowing and perceiving and receiving, which are the higher harmonics of being. None of them are right or wrong. It's just 2 different ways of functioning in the world. And what way actually begins to create the ease that you might be asking for, or the money you might be asking for, or the relationships you might be asking for? Which way of functioning creates more for you? Which way of functioning creates more for the world you'd like to live in? When you're functioning from all the thoughts that you have in your head, all the feelings they bring up, all the emotions that happen, all the no receiving that you can't do because we've decided we can't receive from that kind of person or this kind of situation, you're a very different person in the world than when you're just, hey, you're being, and you're receiving all the information, you're perceiving all of it, and you know, right? Even just the energy of those 2 things is really, really different. Then there's the, okay, so this is the way I was taught to function, thoughts and feelings and emotions and no receiving. That's what I know, right? That's what, so how do I get to being and knowing and perceiving and receiving? Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. If I weren't functioning from feeling hurt right now, what choices would I have available? If I weren't trying to control everything, what other choices would I have? Right? Even those questions begin to open up this space of possibilities, space of possible choices that prior to that moment you didn't have access to because you weren't asking for them. This is the other thing that thoughts, feelings, and emotions do. It's like the only thing you can do with thoughts and feelings and emotions is resist and react or align and agree with things, which keeps you in the right, wrong, good, bad universe. That's all you can do there. It's like when I was talking about when you project and expect things of people, the only choices you have available to you are to separate, judge, and reject. That is what projections and expectations create. That's it. So when you have thoughts in your head, and then you get feelings about them, and then you have emotions about them, and then you react from them, those are the only choices you have available in that tiny little universe. When instead you're like, okay, so what is a beyond this reality choice here? Beyond this reality. That's this reality. This reality's way of telling you how things work. Does it actually work? Is it creating the ease you want in your relationships? Is it actually creating the space and the joy that you'd like to have in your relationships? Is it creating the space for you to be? Right? Allowance actually gives you the space to be, because you can have allowance for the fact that you're in feelings right now. You can have allowance for the fact that that person's having a resting bitch face. You can have allowance for the fact that that person said they're fighting. You can have allowance allows you to be. When you're being, you can know. You can perceive, you can receive. You can be, know, perceive, and receive the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? About you, about the other person. And then you can choose what you'd like to do with all of it, if anything. But mostly it's, what's this going to create? Every choice you make creates. That's important. And consciousness includes all your choices, so you can make any one of them. What do you want to create? So in this scenario with Jim, I have become really aware that I'm the maestro of what I want to create here. He maestros his choices, I maestro my choices. Sometimes I have choices available to me that other people don't have available to them. So I can either ignore those choices or I can make them. By the way, allowance is a choice most people don't have available to them. Do you? What would it create if you chose more of it? Interesting point of view. I have this point of view is a tool for allowance. Who does this even belong to? Is a tool for allowance. Because once you start to acknowledge, you're just aware. You're just a psychic radio receiver tower walking around the world, picking up on all this stuff, thinking that it's your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions. Baby. You're aware of thoughts and feelings and emotions. And when you don't acknowledge you're aware of them, you buy them, then you function from them, and it creates stuff. So the trick is, where are you functioning from? And this changing where you're functioning from is a moment by moment, choice in every 10 seconds thing. If you guys haven't picked up the 10 Keys to Total Freedom by Gary Douglas, don't buy it unless you're courageous and you really, really want to change where you're functioning from, because it'll fry you. Every 2 pages, you'll need your bars run, and if you don't know what bars are, go check out Access Bars. Google that. It's fucking epic. Thank you, Heidi Ann. But this, so changing where you're functioning from is a moment by moment, being aware, making a new choice, being aware, making a new choice, being unaware and going, oh, well, that didn't create what I wanted, making a new choice, right? This is that ongoing practice of choosing, really. But the more you choose allowance, the more the world, and you get a different possibility, and things get easier. Hi, Julia. So feelings or no feelings, which one is right? What if it wasn't about being right? What if it was about being free? And, you know, I get it that for a lot of us that have functioned from feelings for a long time, this conversation can feel threatening, can feel offensive, can feel like maybe I'm discounting things about you. Are any of those true? If we do play from the premise of what's light for you is true for you and what's heavy is a lie, are there lies and feelings that we haven't actually acknowledged? And do they work? Fuck, at the end of the day, you guys, that's what I'm about. Do they work? Is having my feelings get hurt, being offended, being incredibly rageful about something, does that create more of the world I want to live in? And I'm going to wrap up with this because I got 7 minutes and I'm going to soapbox for a second. That I did a post yesterday on this thing that's going on right now with the Supreme Court judge, the Kavanaugh judge, and all the responses that women around the world are making in all their various ways. And one of the conversations that I got into about this with a friend was, he said, well, I think it's that, you know, these women's experiences are being discounted, like they're not important, like they didn't happen, you know, and that's a piss off because they did happen and it did occur, and I was like, yeah, cool, I get that. You know, abuse happens, rape happens, sexual abuse happens. When I was a kid, that occurred with me. My dad did it. My mom was insane. Abuse happens. And most of the, if you are looking for the validation of the rest of the world to acknowledge what you know is true about you, you are going to go to feelings about that, thoughts about that, you're going to judge and you're going to separate and you're going to reject you and the rest of the world. Because that is a projection and an expectation that the world can support you. The world is full of all kinds of people. Judgmental people, supportive people, kind people, mean people. And when you have a point of view that your experience has to be justified and validated by all the people, you get to separate, judge, and reject. And that creates the world that you live in. If, on the other hand, you can just know what you know, and you know what occurred, and you know who did it, and you know you don't require anybody else's validation for that. And you begin to create a different kind of world by being something different in the world. So, what is it that you want to create with the choices that you're making? You have the power. You have the power to be what you'd like to see in the world. Do you want the energy of I was victimized and I want people to validate that, and if they don't validate that, then I'm going to punish them energy in the world? Maybe you do. Or would you like, I'm not a victim. I know what occurred, and I know who I'm choosing to be, and I know what I want to create in the world. What is the reality that you are putting all of your energy into fighting for? And I'm not talking about fighting for or against. You know, if you're fighting for or against, you're actually in this reality, because those are your two choices. I'm talking about what's the reality that you're choosing, that you're actually going to put your energy into having. What are you choosing? Are you choosing a space of less and less judgment? Are you choosing to be more and more hurt and offended and rageful about the injustices in the world? Both of those create something. That's all. They just create something. Is that creating more of what you'd like to have in the world? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. It's just looking at that. Shine a light on it. Every single choice you make contributes to the whole. And now's the time for those of us that actually have the choices available to us. Now's the time to choose them. If you have allowance as a choice available to you, now's the time to choose it. If you have a possibility to choose to be the space of no judgment and actually choose to create a different reality, now's the time. If you don't have that available to you, then this conversation is not relevant. You can just delete this. That's cool. But now's the time. I did a How to Become Money workbook class yesterday, and one of the sentences in there is taking up the challenge of who you really are. Taking up the challenge of who you really are. You are, in this workbook, you are power, and you are awareness, and you are creativity, and you are, I'm forgetting one. I am power, I am awareness, I am creativity, I am, and I am money. I can't remember. So that's what's true about you. So if you're functioning from thoughts, feelings, and emotion, I am control. Yeah, exactly. And control is this knowing that what you ask for is going to show up when it shows up, right? Control's not having power over another person, which is actually what feelings do. Every time you're functioning from feeling hurt or offended, you're actually trying to have power over somebody. Control is just knowing that what you're choosing, the vision you have of your life is going to show up when it shows up, how it shows up. That's control. Awareness is the awareness that every single thing you think gets created. You know, power is that energy, exuberant, quick, life-giving, powerful energy. Creativity is that, I forget how they say it in the workbook, but that, anyway, if somebody remembers creativity and how they say it in the workbook, it's like slipped my mind. But that thing, so I know I'm kind of blending a bunch of things together. At the end of the day, it's that every single choice you make creates. Every single choice you make for interesting point of view creates. Every single time that you pause for a second and go, okay, I could resist and react to this right now. Or is there anything else? Are there any other choices that I have available that would actually create the world that I want to have? Is the world I want to have one that's filled with more anger, more rage, more fury, more hate, more blame, more shame, more regret, and more guilt? If I choose to function from feelings right now, that's the world that I'm going to be creating. Or is the world that I want to live in, that I'm a part of creating, one of ease and joy and glory? Is that even a reality I'm willing to ask for and move towards? I can either fight against or I can move towards. What's the reality I'm moving towards with my choices? What's the reality you're moving towards with your choices? Interesting point of view. I have this point of view for every single thought, every single feeling, every single emotion, every single thing that comes up, for at least 3 days, will start to give you the space of you where you actually feel like you have those choices. It will start to get you out of the resistance and the reaction to everything and the alignment and the agreement of everything. It will start to actually create a space for you to be, to create in, to create with. And that's all I gotta say about that. If you got anything out of this, I'd love it if you'd share it. And I will see you guys next week.